Yeah, I think I lost my train of thought a little bit, thinking of my magical revival moment, I think, and lost my initial thought as it usually happens. So I was thinking about that night when I got scared by a deer, and my point was that even being attracted to darkness and more obscure ways of knowing, you still, I think a lot of us still have this fear, and it is now very rare that one, like I said before, I don't have to say that, but we are so, it's so rare to be really in complete darkness and in complete wilderness. So we kind of, I think somehow we forget, and perhaps we forget what it's like to be faced with this way of perceiving. I often think about stuff like that, like what would it feel like to be dropped in the middle of the ocean in complete darkness during the storm? Most of us will never know what it's like, what it feels like, and what kind of fear, and thanks God, probably, but what kind of fears are determining, or what kind of fears are taking over your perception of the world, or of being alive. It must be a very perspective shifting experience, to say the least. And in similar way, or maybe not as extreme, but finding yourself in complete darkness is really rare. And same with silence. There's always some source of light, some source of noise, and often human presence. So these it's not I often wonder what it would be like, or what it was for humans before, when they were really at the mercy of nature. It's something that I think is very hard to imagine now. It's buried somewhere, but it's deep, buried deep. And so I often think how it must have influenced people before, how these energies and these forces, how they must have impacted them, and also the whole process of communing with spirits and of performing magic of all kind, really. Because now it's funny, like we're facing problems, like just the fact of it's so hard to be alone, for like to find yourself alone, and with no interruptions, with no noises, and it really is something that makes a whole lot of a difference. And so I was saying that even being attracted to darkness, you still might have this primal fear of it, and so did I, and when I was in Spain now, in lockdown, I was in the countryside, and I was going for these long walks where really, there were really places where there was absolutely no one, and and I found myself coming back home very late with no lights, with no. I would never use a torch or anything because I found it was just blinding me, and I really wanted to experience what was around me. And I think there were still boars. Yeah, there must have been boars because I found a dead boar once. But I think that was probably the worst thing that I could have found, and the scolopendra. But other than that, relatively safe. And one thing that struck me definitely was the presence of stars that I kind of forgot about. Always being in the cities, well, most of the time, and it was such a huge difference. Even though I think the air there was not the greatest either, but still. So I started, reconnecting slowly with that element, and started feeling quite comfortable. Although there were moments when I would get scared by something, but it was a very interesting experience altogether, to seeing shadows shifting and suddenly you find yourself in this surreal world that is the same world but it's different. And everything takes a different shape. And later, well, I suppose I had a little bit of time to go back into city life when I went to Berlin as well, and that's back to the city. But then I ended up in the countryside again, and here at first I was completely alone in the house. So that was another thing. I don't think I've ever I don't think I've ever lived like in a house on my own for a period of time. I can't think of that of a moment like that. And in the countryside. So again, your imagination works, and it's very different to what I was used to. So it took me a while to even get used to the noises of the house. And unfortunately now I'm not alone anymore. But yeah. Anyway, so here, adjusting to the house, to the sounds of the house, and to the sounds of nature, and of surrounding areas. And again, I always say it's not really, even being in the middle of nowhere, it's not completely, there are neighbors, there are people, there are, farmers or whatever, all sorts of countryside noises, sheep. So it's not a completely dead silent. It's a very different environment than what it was in Spain. And at the beginning I came here was, I wonder if that plays a role as well. It was winter. It was end of autumn, and there is a cemetery here, a graveyard rather, near a church, and I would get, I wouldn't be afraid of going there by night. And even though, it's just 2 steps away, and what could possibly happen, Well, I could bring some lost soul with me by accident back home. Well, yeah, that would not be ideal, I suppose. But and there's woods nearby as well, and all these places, I love to walking around by day, And then by night I would, again, there are no lights, no street lights at all. So there were moments when I would just walk my dog at night, like in complete darkness. I would get, I would get adjusted to that, and I wouldn't be scared walking in between houses or something. But, I would not venture to the woods. And at some point, I even told myself, I was thinking that I do have to spend the night. That's not what I was telling myself here, but like even back in Spain, it never quite happened. I'm not sure why, but I knew that at some point I will have to face myself. I will have to, go to the woods and probably camp somewhere and do this whole process of, initiation and sort of a vision quest style. And here I thought that at some point I will go to the woods at night and just see what's out there, what's going on, and maybe try, getting in touch with the locals. And because it's so easy, I think, to get stuck, and even when it comes, I think it's my impression that I think that ceremonial magic is also, because of the practical side of thing, where you have all this stuff around you, it's easy to forget that these are forces of nature, and that it's easy to kind of get into comfort of being in your own house and protected by four walls, and fair enough, it's very hard to find a place where you wouldn't be interrupted. But I think it's just my my speculation that it's a whole different experience when you're in a nature, even when I just think that the kind of interface of it makes it easy to forget, as opposed to being like, digging in dirt kind of witchcraft. It kind of creates this, I think, well, this kind of separation, like, well, I wouldn't say that all magic is nature magic, really, but you see what I mean, right? I think there can be a tendency of this separation, and taking all that, crap into nature will be also quite difficult, just logistically. But yeah, again, I was just kind of pulled into. I think even for me, I tend to separate things in my mind that are not naturally separated, but somehow it's like there's a thing in my mind, and if I think of it from one side, from one perspective, I see a certain image, and then I come to the same thought from a different direction, and I see a different facet, or the whole landscape is a bit different, and then I realize that it is the same thing. It's just I've been looking I've been walking around it, so it looks different from different sides. But you kind of only realize it once you walk around it. It's like when you don't know a place and you're walking one direction, you're exploring, you're going back home, and then you're going the other direction next day, and you arrive at the same place, and then you realize that, like, oh, that's the same place. It's just like a different path, and it's kind of connecting the dots in your mind, and this kind of mental map is expanding, and you have just like, oh wow. So in this kind of way, I think again we sometimes stand in our own way. So yeah, I've been and let's say I've been well, I started running again, and if you do any sort of long distance activities, when you go for a long run, well, inevitably at some point you need to use the bathroom, and I have been called into the woods, and I thought, okay, this is the time. It's been getting dark because I tend to chase sunsets, so after the sunset was getting dark, obviously, in the woods, and I was like, no, I must. There was like the fear and the promise, and I decided I had to face my fear of the dark and go to the woods, and so I did, and and I knew that there was nothing to be afraid of, because here there are no boars here, right? I have to check that information. Pretty sure there are no boars. Definitely no bears, no wolves, nothing like that. Just sheep and deer and foxes, and definitely sheep aren't running freely across the woods. So anyway, so I went to the woods and I started listening, and there was just so much going on there, so much life and so much, I'm just watching the birds going crazy outside. What's going on there? Is it dinner time? It's interesting how they seem to have some kind of purpose there, like they're on a mission. So I was listening to all these noises and hoping, that something would happen, that something would impact me one way or another, that something maybe will show up, or that I will feel some presence. And some noises were really close to me, and I was hoping for a deer, coming really close. So I was listening to all this, and everything seemed to stay a safe distance away, and I walked across the woods and on the other side where the road was, and nothing special happened other than just, nothing special. It was special in a way. On its own, it was special because I've never done this before. It might sound silly. It's like, what's a big deal to, but this fear and the idea of really facing the darkness without any light. I mean, it's it's something different to talk about it and actually kind of envelop yourself in this darkness, in this sensation where you're kind of melting into the environment and melting into the darkness and becoming starting to feel safe with it, not scared anymore. I think that's what's important. Well, after all, you're probably the most dangerous thing out there. Well, at least around here. So I went on the other side, and then I heard this weird, like, banging, as if somebody was hitting a tree trunk with a wooden log or something, like very much on purpose. It was very strange. That kind of freaked me out a little bit because it was way too close, comparing to all other sounds. Like I didn't hear anything out there to make this kind of very solid, purposeful noise, as if like I couldn't hear a deer in bushes or anything like that. So it was strange. Well, I got out of there. And the next time I was in the woods again, and it was a bit stranger. It was I really did hear some steps very close to me, probably hoofs. And well, that should give it away. But yeah, it felt very weird when I wasn't expecting to see much because it was completely dark, but still, you would expect a shadow or something. And there was nothing. I would just really, really try very hard to see something, and I could just hear the steps in the leaves. And then I heard the sound, like, I don't know, it was like barking of a dog, but a very upset and angry and otherworldly dog. And I was getting the hell out of there. And then I investigated a little bit, and of course I'm pretty sure it was a deer. A very one of this they always seem to make some new noises I wasn't aware of. They're just full of surprises. They're quite magical animals though. But I think all animals are, if we take away their, even a cow, if you kind of take away this idea of that we know what cow is, imagine meeting any of these animals kind of in the wilderness for the first time without knowing what it is. Very strange. Very strange. Everything can be so strange. I've been talking for a long time now, and I'm not sure if I managed to really convey what I wanted to share, but yeah, one of those moments, I guess, and I just go into this trance of thought. it is very hard to there are things that once you say them, or you have to be very careful how you say them, because very easily they can sound mundane and banal, and they're not. And I really want to share the effect, some things had on me. And sometimes it's better to write or make something or take a picture and not necessarily talk about it. But I try. I try different things and see what happens. So I'll go now, and I'll see you soon.